I want to welcome everyone who is watching this particular recording and interview. I have a very special guest here today, and I'm so excited to introduce her. This is Dianne Allen. She is a mentor for visionary leaders. She hosts the podcast Someone Gets Me, and she works with professionals and visionaries who may be dealing with personal and professional and even existential crises. I love that, existential crises. It's just something that I truly relate to. Dianne's vision and mission is to educate and inspire people, you or me and everyone she meets, because I know how dynamic she is, to touch our inner fires and allow that beauty that we have inside to come forth in the world. Dianne believes that we all have a message that is healing and uplifting somewhere deep inside. And she has designed her podcast to help people awaken and live from their inner beauty, fire, and truth. Dianne has worked with visionaries for decades and in many capacities. She does speaking engagements, she has written books, and she does personal consultation services as well, and they are all well received. So welcome, Dianne. I am so delighted to have you here. We know each other through other venues and networking types of things, and I was really inspired by something that you shared in one of our groups that we're both in. It's a term that you're using to describe empaths, or the conditions that empaths, or the situations, I guess, that empaths experience, or I don't know, what would you call it? Well, let me just say the term. Empath Distress Disorder. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that, I got all lit up, because I knew that there are people who watch my videos who know that they're empaths or suspect it, and are probably experiencing a lot of the things that you call empath distress disorder. So I'm just going to ask you to explain that and explain what that's about, first of all, and then hopefully you can give our viewers some guidance and some tips and some things that will help them to really be able to consciously work with that if they're experiencing it.
Oh, I'm happy to, Sandy. Thank you so much for doing this interview, because I think that what I'm calling empath distress disorder is really a big deal. And so when you asked me to do this, I was like, wow, cool, somebody's hearing what I'm saying. And I work with visionaries, and most of them are empaths anyway. And a lot of the people I've worked with and professionally and friends of mine, we've all been empathic. You know, that's kind of the group that I find myself in. And what I've noticed is that there is a constellation of challenges unique to empaths. Because I have some clients who are not empaths and they don't have these issues. Things like overall body aches, where somebody might think it's fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, but it's really more the empathic stuck energy. Or insomnia. They wake up out of nowhere and are thinking about things or feeling something and knowing something's going on. Different than a cortisol problem or something else. You know, there's all different factors, but they just know that something's happening. That happens a lot with empaths, right? And then there is stomach and digestion problems, where either they eat too much or can't eat enough, or whatever they eat doesn't sit right with them, or it feels like they need to change their diet and they don't know what their body now wants. Difficulty with boundaries. Whose energy is it anyway? You know, mine or yours? And that's kind of where it started. I work with some professional people who have big audiences, and they have time where they are in the audience or out greeting the people, and they have real difficulty discerning what's theirs and what's all the people in the audience. And so they're exhausted by the end, because they don't have the energy boundaries. And so I teach them how to do that so that they're not exhausted. So an empath, if they're around somebody and they don't have clear boundaries, I call them squishy boundaries, then they get tired really easy. And then things just have this kind of nebulous, that's why I call it like a disorder, where things aren't ordered, things aren't feeling good. And they don't really know why, because it's a little bit of all these little things. And that's because they're picking up all of this energy in the world, and they're not passing it through or discharging it. And they may not even be aware that it's not even theirs. It might be someone else's. So that's how I coined the term, because I started seeing it everywhere around me. In fact, I'm in the middle of working on like a little short book to explain it to people, because it's very common, I think.
Oh, yes. And I know it's common among the people who watch my videos. And I'm just going to add the little human design piece here. For those of you who are wondering, Dianne is a manifesting generator. So her thing as her energy type is to build things and create things that help other people to engage in whatever it is that they're here to engage in, to use their gifts in the way that they're here to use them, so that everybody works well together in the way that we're supposed to work. So she's a builder, she's a creator, and I know that you've created programs. Do you have a program for this yet, by the way, or are you still working on the book?
I do have a program for this specifically that is actually just launching. I haven't started really putting it out there as far as in the media yet, but I do have it available for people, where I meet with them every week, and there's some special things with it because empaths need a little bit of extra. So I created that, and you're right, I'm a builder creator. Everybody goes, I can't keep up with you, and I just laugh and go, well, Sandy told me I'm a manifesting generator, so this is what I'm supposed to do, and I just keep on going. And it really helped me make friends with myself and that part of me that's always creating, like I don't have to stop. I don't have to feel bad about it. So the wisdom has really, really supported my growth, just to, being in the back of my mind that, okay, I can create this program and this thing to help empath people. I don't have to not do it, because I work with leaders. The visionary leaders are empaths mostly. So it all works.
Yeah, and the multitasking that you're able to do with the power that you have as a manifesting generator is just amazing. I am always bowled over by everything that you have going on. but what I love about your energy is that you do really get people. And, as you're talking about how, about Empath Distress Disorder, it's like, yeah, that describes me. It describes a lot of people I work with, especially because I work with a lot of projectors who are always absorbing, and usually they have designs that are very open. So I know that people can relate to that whole thing that you said about boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I love the term you use, is squishy boundaries.
Yes. Sandy, boundaries are so important, and I'm talking in the expanded use of the word, because most people think of boundaries and they think, well, how close can this person get to me, or if you can touch me or not touch me, or hit me or not hit me, and all of that, and that's true. But with empaths, I see it a little differently. I look at it as energy exchange, and everything we're doing is an energy exchange. And if I'm soaking in all the energy and I don't know how to pass it through me, and I'm not sure what to do, what happens is it gets stuck in me and drags my energy down. And then pretty soon I'm not sleeping and I'm not eating, and I feel kind of depressed, and I feel gooky, and I don't know what my purpose is, and why should I do anything anyway, and it just, becomes this waterfall. But another part of the boundaries that is equally important, that marries to this, the part of how much I let in, is how much of me do I let show up. That I'm in charge of how much of Dianne shows up in any moment, just like everyone is. And most people don't talk about that, but that, to me, that's as important, because if I'm in a situation where, because I'm very, very empathic, and I'm also very intuitive, and they're not mutually exclusive, and a lot of people have both, but not always. And if I go into a big group of people, like I speak in front of large audiences, or even if I go to a sporting event or a concert or the mall, I mean, it doesn't have to be that many, but a lot more than just me, then I notice how much of me I let show up. So if I'm going to a sporting event, I don't bring my intuition and my oversensitivity, and I don't bring my excitabilities, unless it's about the sport, or all of those things. I dial it in. I have this exercise I do that kind of is like a dimmer switch. I dim down the amount of energy that I'm emitting so that the other people and the environment does not soak onto me, and now I'm leaving with all of this static chaos. And so I'm in charge of how much of me shows up in an event or situation. So when I work intensely with my clients, I let all of me show up so that all of my gifts and all of who I am is fully present. If I'm in a situation where somebody's trying to take my energy, or there's, it's hostile or something's going on. I used to work in an emergency room, so it was very chaotic. Then I learn how to dial it back accordingly. So that inner boundary of how much you let of you show up gives you a lot of power and control over your own energy and your own resources. So it's both those things. And when they get squishy, things get weird. So if things are weird in relationships or work or in life, most likely there's one or the other or both boundaries that are squishy, and that's creating the rub most of the time.
What do you mean by squishy?
Conflicted, chaotic, inconsistent sometimes. Like a consistent boundary is my yes means yes and my no means no, and it's not backed down from except very rarely. Mm-hmm. Or somebody who might say yes and then really mean no. Or I know somebody who said once, I say yes to everybody and then I do what I want. That's a squishy boundary.
I see. Yeah, I can see that.
Mixed message, if some people send mixed messages, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. And then they come around with a million excuses or delays or what about this or what about that and maneuvering. That's a squishy boundary. That healthy people speak in specifics and they're very direct and clear. Unhealthy people speak in generalities and it's hard to pin them down. It's nebulous. Mm-hmm. And no matter how the delivery is, right? So when somebody's got squishy boundaries, they're usually, trying to grab smoke. It's hard to get to the real thing.
Yeah, as you're describing that, I'm thinking about in the human design chart, the undefined will center and how that can lead people into this squishy boundary situation, because when you have that energy consistently, when it's defined, it's really good for you to make your promises and keep your promises. But when it's undefined, it's the best thing to promise is to not make a promise and to be very clear about that. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the squishiness of, oh yes, I can do that, because you're caught up in wanting to prove your worth, wanting to prove your value, and then not being able to follow through, mm-hmm. or not being able to be pinned down, or developing these kinds of mechanisms where you're just sort of slippery and in and out with your commitments. So yeah, I can see how now I understand that squishiness that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you've got this technique where you dial back, right?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that empaths who are experiencing empath distress disorder could work with?
Well, there's lots of things. Immediately, the first few things I suggest to people is making sure you're hydrated with good quality water. That when our bodies are not properly hydrated, then it's hard to process things and we become overly sensitive. And that makes not for a good thing. I also suggest really paying attention to eating, how you eat, what you eat. Empaths are very energy sensitive, so when they eat all heavy food and things like that, it draws them down. If they don't have enough grounding food, they can be floating around. I use a lot of meditation with people, or guided things. I have a podcast that has guided meditations on it, just to help say, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going, and the big one, I think, is learning to ask the question, whose is this? Whose side of the street is it on? Because often when I'm getting a read or I'm feeling something, then it's my responsibility to determine, is it mine? Is it generating inside out? Or am I picking it up from somewhere? Now, we could be picking it up from someplace and someone that's not physically present. That's what an empath does. So it's important to ask that question, like, wow, whose is this? What is going on? And to be able to then say, it's not on my side of the street, and so therefore I close the door to it. Rather than sucking it all in and then trying to deal with it when it's not yours to deal with.
Yeah. I love that. I work with that a lot with my clients as well. The whole question of becoming aware of whose is this when I'm feeling it. Right. And I love your term, what'd you say, on my side of this? Is it on my
Inside
side
of the
of the
street,
street?
yeah.
I love that.
Well, I think of, you think of suburbia neighborhoods, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I gave this example in my last client just right before we got on this call, and they're like, well, I don't know how to tell. I said, well, just think about it. When you mow your yard, unless you're doing a good deed, you're not edging your neighbor's yard too, and you're not mowing the whole neighborhood. There's boundaries on what you mow and how far you edge. Like I might edge a little over my property line to my neighbor's driveway because it's kind of right there by her property line. Not always, but I might. But I know that I'm doing that as a favor, as a nice thing, it's close enough, why not? But there's boundaries on it, just like there's banks on a river. It contains the energy. So I just say, whose side of the street is it on? Like, and then that gives me a starting point. It might be the side of the street that's somebody close to me, and it is their energy, and I know it. And I make a conscious, willful choice to let myself experience it to then help solve it or help them or whatever. But that's a choice. It's not an accident. It's when we accidentally let this energy in and we do not know how to discharge it that we get ourselves very sick. I know some people who've ended up with throat cancer because of it. It locks up their throat chakras.
Oh, yes. That's like one of the first things that even with human design that we talk about with our openness in our energy centers and in our charts is the ability to learn how to discharge energy. So I love that you use that word, and as you're saying, it locks up your throat chakra and it can make you sick. The throat chakra in the human design chart, that's that throat center, which is a lot of times not motorized, meaning that unlike you as a manifesting generator, there's not that energy to initiate a conversation, or in the case of manifestors, to initiate action, and there's this need to kind of sit back and discern which side of the street it's on. Is it mine? Is it someone else's? And do I need to really respond to it?
Right.
And that over responding or that overreaction can burn out. That it's the same kind of theory. It can burn out the throat center and affect all the hormones and the thyroid in particular. So I love that you have your vocabulary and your paradigm around it, and it's so much in tune with things that I really try to get across to those of you out there and to my clients, that this is something that energetically and mechanically needs to be paid attention to in order to stay healthy, in order to be productive and functional in the world and in your relationships. So awesome. What would you like to talk about at this point?
Well, I think one of the things that I'd like to bring up is there's old energy sometimes that follows people if they haven't been believed, because empaths a lot of times can see things and know things or experience things more sensitively, because there's different kinds of empath, and somebody who's unaware might not believe them. Like, that's not true, or you're wrong, or why are you being so sensitive, or whatever. And it's really easy if we've been going through that our whole life, especially if it started when we were younger, to believe that what we see or what we know or what we understand is not real or somehow bad. And I want to say really very clearly that just because somebody else may or may not get it doesn't make it wrong or bad or you inaccurate. And I have a lot of people that I work with where eventually after we get going, it all, this pain level comes up, and the pain is they didn't believe me when I was younger, so I stuffed it. And then now as they get older, it can't help but come out. And it's a kind of like a reacquainting with themselves that, it is real. Not everybody has the gift. Not everybody is an empath. People throw the word around a lot, but that's not true. I have some very good friends of mine who look at me like, you're feeling what? Like they can't even comprehend the intensity or the level of experience I have. Mm-hmm. And they're not friends who don't believe me, but they can't understand it fully, right? So the big one is that to trust yourself and find people in your corner who have an understanding, which is one of the things I like about human design, because Like even when you do my podcast interview, we should put a link to that podcast interview because you shared some valuable things when I interview you on Someone Gets Me.
Yeah,
And
we'll put a link to a lot of things,
yeah,
a lot of resources here.
right. Because I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, when I did my human design meeting with you, I was like blown away. It was awesome. And when you elaborated on things just in our conversation in my podcast interview, I remember having a couple epiphanies just by the things you said that you're looking at my chart. You go, well, this is how it is. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. And it helped me shed some layer of, is it real? And because of the disbelief from the people around me when I was younger. So I think if we're always open to have more and more clarity, then being an empath, that we don't have to have empath distress disorder. We don't have to be in a place where being an empath is a painful experience or one where we have to work through. We can learn how to navigate the world. That's what I teach people how to navigate it. It's not something to fix. It's something to embrace and move you forward into some really cool, amazing place.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I'm wondering, as you're talking and you're describing the different aspects of empath distress disorder and some of the things that people can do, I'm wondering if you have maybe a practical example of, I don't want you to get into the details of your clients and all of that, but if you have a general example so that people who suspect that they're empaths can really recognize themselves.
I can give you an example out of my own life, and that way that I'm not breaking anyone's confidence because it's common. And it's very easy. And one of the ways to tell if you're an empath is if you're in a conversation with somebody on the phone or in person and you had plenty of energy when you got on the phone or you ran into them or you met them for dinner or whatever. And then when you're done with the conversation within an hour or so, you're so tired from the core that you need to take a nap or feel like you need to. That you're spent. Wait a minute, I had a whole bunch of energy and now I don't. That is a very big example of somebody who's an empath and just absorbed all that energy. So basically you were like a gas station. You just fed that other person a ton of energy and you didn't reserve any for you. And then now you're spent, you're on E and you need to regenerate. That's a big one. And I see it mostly in leadership and in people who are trying to help others, whether it's a CEO or a massage therapist, or I work with a lot of athletes and a lot of musicians. And so there tend to be empaths, the good ones. And so they're taking on all the energy. I will have a musician that I work with and he's amazing. And he plays to big audiences and he can feel it all. And so when he comes off stage, he can tell you about the girl in the fourth row and the guy and the girl over there and who had an anniversary probably going on over there. And he gets all of this energy information while he's performing. So that then by the end, he's like exhilarated and spent at the same time, right? Because his adrenaline's up because it's like, wow, that was a great show. It was awesome. And then the rest of him is like, okay, I need a nap. Wow. Because of all the energy coming at him. And some people try to say, well, it's bad energy. No, those people really like him or they wouldn't be at the concert. So it wasn't, they weren't trying to steal it. They weren't trying to harm him. They were just so excited and so open that now their vessel's empty, right? Feed me the music, feed me the whatever it is they're looking for. And so they're getting fed, yeah. And while if he's not careful, ends up spent. So then if you do that multiple days in a row and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not getting enough rest, you don't have enough quiet time, over time it drags you down and you can start feeling a little depressed or appetite could be off, your weight could start acting weird, and then you end up with an existential crisis. Is it worth it? Is it really worth it or not worth it? Or am I supposed to even be doing this? Because look at me, I'm like really paying a big price. And then there's some people who take the martyr game and, oh, this is just what I have to do. And I don't work with those people too much unless they're willing to come off being a martyr. But it's a very common thing. I have an athlete that does the same thing. And he's a college athlete and he gives all the time. Great player, great in classroom, has great friends, does a lot of cool stuff, but he doesn't know when to stop and like bring it in and say, okay, this energy is mine. I'm giving from the overflow. So I teach everyone how to imagine those fountains that you see in a pond where all the water comes up to the center and goes out, that you're only allowed to give from your overflow. So your lake has to be full. And then you can siphon energy out of your lake and spray it and show it and give it to whoever you want to. But you have to do it from a full lake. If your lake is dehydrated or dry or stressed or overworked and the water level has dropped, then you don't get to get, the fountain doesn't get to get turned on. It only can get turned on when you're giving from your extra. And that seems to help people a lot, like give from the overflow. I'm only giving from my extra. I'm not giving you my core reserve. And that's one of that boundary of how much of me shows up.
That's a great analogy with the fountain and the lake. And one point I want to emphasize is the thing that you explained, the dynamic that you explained of over giving. You know, I typically think of an empath as someone who is receiving all the time, and that's sort of burning them out because they're receiving. But there is that other dynamic that's connected to that, especially when you're receiving stuff that feels good, like your musician client or your athlete client, all that fan energy and that, you know, that adoration and that openness that people, you know, they really want what that person has, feels good, I imagine, when he takes it in and he can feel the woman in the fourth row and all this stuff. And that probably makes him want to give even more.
Yes.
Give even more. And I know I've been in that dynamic, in that situation a lot, you know, before I really learned how to draw boundaries and understood about this whole energy exchange thing, you know, and it's true, you know, it feels good coming in, and it would make me want to give out even more until my lake was dry.
Yes. I've gone through that. I've dried my lake up more than once, which is how I've learned how to do it. And I've done that in my career, but I didn't realize it. That very same thing. All this good energy was coming in, and I didn't realize that my wanting to give more as a result of it was really burning myself out.
Yes.
So people who overwork, they work 12, 14, 15 hours a day because it feels good. If you're not taking care of yourself along the way, that's irresponsible.
Yeah.
You know, because you end up burning yourself out. And then you're no good to anybody, really, and then you're hurting yourself, so that doesn't work.
Yeah, I just did a live stream on YouTube about whole life burnout, which was kind of one of my several burnout experiences where, you know, all the foundations in my life just burned out, you know. And even before that whole life burnout experience, earlier in my life, I had the existential crisis experience. And as we're talking, I'm putting that together, that, you know, all of this energy was coming in. I had no clue about it. I was giving and giving and giving. My lake dried up, and I was looking at my life like, what am I doing?
Yep.
What am I doing with my life? And, you know, and it's kind of a scary place to be until you realize what's going on and you can recover and heal from it.
Yes. That's why I teach like a 5-step system, and I have like a way where we cover the 5 major life areas. And I tell everybody after they learn the system in the 5 areas is just do 1% a day of improvement in each area, because it's synergistic and cumulative. So if you do 1% in every day, that's more than a 5% improvement. And then every day it builds, like yoga, the practice builds day to day to day, right? So it always builds. And so if we're always in that mindset of keeping our energy full, our lake full, and how do we get it to rise from empty, and maybe we even burned out the motor on the pump for the fountain, we might need to like get home. We might need to redo this whole thing. And so in which case we just do a little bit every day. The tendency is to make up for lost time or hurry. And neither one of those work because they work against an empath and their energy sensitivities. So a lot of my work is, okay, let's come up with a pace that supports you really, and understand it's a process. You did not get to an empty lake with a burned out motor in one day. So we're not going to rebuild the motor and fill the lake right up, because it would be too much too quick, and it would cause a healing crisis. Even if I could do it like that, it will cause a crisis for that person. So the way out of whatever the problem is, we want to make it so that it's friendly to the system, so that our body and our mind and our soul will want to receive the information and the newness and not discharge it or not negate it or be so overwhelmed by it that we give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the steadiness of your energy, and I'm hoping that it, as you're speaking, that it translates to our viewers.
Uh-huh.
That as you're talking, it's like I'm listening to you explained that you have a 5-step process, and it just sort of grounds me to listen to that, to hear that there's a process and I've got you. And this is again, that manifesting generator gift of, when you're really grounded and you're really healthy as a manifesting generator. And of course you've been doing this work for a long time, there's this energy that you exude that's like, here I am, come here to me, I've got this.
Yes.
and I'm solid and I'm consistent and I can steady the boat. Just your talking does that.
Great. Oh, it's great, right? But it's true. People say that about me. I mean, that's why the podcast is called Someone Gets Me, because everybody says that after they meet with me for 1 hour. They'll go, oh my God, somebody finally gets me. And yes, because I'm an empath and I'm an intuitive and I live that myself, but also because I've worked with thousands and thousands of people over decades. And there are some universal truths about us humans and the way we operate, and mm-hmm. So it works out really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because you say that I'm grounding, and I am right now. I'm very grounded, and I did a lot of energy stuff, so I would be grounded before this. But, so far today, I've taught a 3-hour group to people with mental illness, and I've done 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions, and I have another one when we're done.
Wow.
And Monday's my busy day. And because of that, and I know that I'm an empath and there's a lot of energy involved in switching gears, not even just the people, just switching gears all day, that I invested a bunch of time yesterday and Saturday up-leveling my lake was like overflowing, like the banks were overflowing. So that by the time I rolled into today, I know that I have a little extra to give. And I know that if I give a little bit more, I'm still got a full lake. And so it's like proper planning prevents poor performance. And I'm a very, very big believer in doing everything you want to do. I'll work a lot in a day. I do all kinds of cool stuff. And I'm writing a book right now. I'm doing all these other things. And proper planning. If I'm going to think I'm going to be creative and write a book someday, in the afternoon or Saturday morning or whatever, then what am I going to do the day before that is going to add water line to my lake, so that then when I'm doing this activity, I'm not spending my vital resources. I'm still in my own overflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it makes it so I can do more things and have more fun and do, just by little proper planning,
Yeah. And projectors out there, what she's saying, multiply that by 10, 100, and that's really what it takes for us to really stay resilient and stay buoyant and keep our lake full,
Yeah.
And of course we're not capable of all of that multitasking, or we can be if we've got the right energy coming at us, supporting us from other places. But yeah, it's the same. I love that, that reminder that you really have to fill your tank. You really have to have that water line up there before you expend more energy. And some of us like projectors, some of us energy types that don't have that motorized energy to build that sacral energy to keep going like you do. Take that process, take that thing that you do, that self-care thing that you do, and multiply it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't even realize that our lake is low a lot of times.
Yeah. It's true. Most people don't realize their lake is low. That old frog in the water thing. If you throw a frog in the water and turn the heat up slowly, it'll cook. Mm-hmm. If you throw it in boiling water, it'll jump out. And so we live in a society where there's really no break, where there's always phones going off. There's always EMFs, which empaths are sensitive to. There's all these things happening all the time. And if we don't carve out the break and we don't carve out the fuel, then it's just going to suck us dry by default. So it's so important for empathic people to really take control of what and how much they do. I mean, I always have my own car at any event I go to. Always, I'm driving. Because if it gets to be too much, I'm leaving. I don't announce it. Sometimes I'll say goodbye to people, but sometimes I go to the bathroom and then I'm like, ooh, man, that's a lot. And I just leave. And my friends know it. It's not like I'm being rude, but I don't let myself be in a place where I don't have an exit strategy for my own energetic welfare.
That is so awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking that I teach all my people that, Plato said we teach people how to treat us and we get the behavior we tolerate. So I teach all my people in my world. They know that I'm probably going to be driving, and they like it when I drive, so they don't care. And I like to drive, so it all works out. And people who know when I'm going to an event with them, they know that if I say I have to leave, that means I'm leaving. It's not up for discussion. But they understand and they know because I've taken time and invested in the relationships and explained that level of sensitivity. And said, you just don't understand. I can hardly walk into a Best Buy without my skin feeling like needles are everywhere. I have a very intense case of being an empath. So I have to take care of myself. Otherwise, I will be spent all the time, and I will have my own empath distress disorder, which I have in fact felt in my life. So.
I love your strategies. Your strategies are so empowering. And I think that education piece is so important, because people do take offense to if you leave a party and they don't understand why, and they take it personally because maybe they have empath distress disorder or maybe they're really sensitive or have some unhealed something within them, and they take it personally and they take offense to the fact that you have to go and take care of yourself because they don't understand that you really do need to do that.
Right. Well, and we live in a society that's full of self-centered people. So if you leave a party early, the first assumption of most people, not everyone, but most people will be that you're dissing them. They don't immediately think what's wrong with her or what's going on with her. They think about me. She left my party early. Well, actually, no. What about my friend who decided to needed to take care of herself?
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to share about empath distress disorder? The way that you work, how you see life?
Well, there's a couple things. Empath distress disorder was a term I came up with, as I said, because of all these things. But it's not a diagnosis, and it's not because you're stuck with it forever and that you're wrong. I use it as a framework so people can understand that there's a constellation of things that could potentially happen, one or more or whatever, that relate to the fact that you're burning yourself out. So you might have a little pieces of it, or it might be one or the other. And I've learned in this culture that unless you put negative words like distress and disorder together, they don't listen to you. So I turned it that way to try to help as many people as I can possibly, and wake up as many people as possible to the fact that I believe the highly sensitive empath is here to help bring in some of the new, more compassionate, loving ways to live. And if we're all beaten up in some kind of disarray or disorder or burned out, then we cannot naturally live what we are here to do. And so I kind of see it as an urgent soul calling of mine to help people really start seeing that it's a gift and let's not squander it. And just because it's called a disorder, it means it's a disorder. Your life is out of order. It does not mean you're sick. It's not pathological, and it doesn't mean you're stuck with it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's the feedback from the world telling you it's time to make a change.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, has your book been written?
Which book?
The book on empath distress disorder. I know you have other books, and I'm going to link them down below.
The Empath Distress Disorder book is nearly finished. It should be at the editor by the end of the week, if everything goes the way I'm anticipating, but we never know what the world's going to do. And then for after the editor gets it back to me, it's only a matter of about 8 weeks or so before it's out. I have the cover pretty much ready. It's pretty close. I've written a few blogs on it so far, and that book's almost there. I have a light worker instruction manual that's coming out next.
Oh, how exciting.
It's for people who are light workers, who are the healers, it's an outright instruction manual. I have somebody who I worked very closely with who started awakening, and they didn't know what to do with the chemicalization and all that was happening. And so halfway through the process, he said, I know, you need to write a book called Light Worker Instruction Manual, and give everybody instructions, because if he didn't have me, he wouldn't know what to do. He goes, well, not everybody has you, so why don't you write it down, and then they could have you. And so that book is coming out next. And then after that is the Empath Distress Disorder book. And they'll probably be fairly close to each other, since my annual retreat for my empaths and visionaries is in September. My goal is to have them both live by then.
Awesome. Yeah. So how can people find out more about your books, your retreat? I'm hoping it's not invitation only, that anybody can come.
Anybody can come to the retreat if they sign up for it. There's 3 levels. There's general admission, VIP, and then inner circle people get, special receptions and sessions with me and things like that. The retreat can be found at visionsapplied.com/annual retreat, annual-retreat. And that's on my Visions Applied page, which is the overarching corporate umbrella of the work I do. It's also the publishing company for the books, and so the books are there. Links to the podcasts are there, things like that. SomeoneGetsMe.com has all of the individual episodes of my podcast, SomeoneGetsMe.com, along with a services page for visionary leaders specifically, and some other like blogs and content. I have blogs on both pages for people to read. And of course, I have a YouTube channel and Instagram and wherever else I can be found. I'm on all of those. So however somebody would like to find me, that's fine. I can be emailed with any questions at Ms. Dianne Allen at gmail.com, and it's MSDIANNEALLEN at gmail.com. That is a direct email to me, and only I answer it. So it's private and confidential. So if you have a question or a comment, reach out. I answer all the emails off that page about every other day or so, every day or every other day. It's usually never that more than 48 hours to hear from me.
Great. So you have a variety of avenues, a variety of services and products and things to help and support people in ways that they can get in touch with you. I love your multitasking powerhouse energy.
Well, and I'm just sitting here laughing because I do everything custom. So when somebody contacts me and I get the intuition and I hear what they want or what they're looking for, what their goal is, if it doesn't already fit into something I've already created, I will on the spot create it for them. Because no 2 people are the same. And I don't pretend to think that they are. So if it doesn't kind of fit something I'm already doing, even though the orchestration of everything's unique, I have a meeting with somebody tomorrow that I'm doing that. It's fully custom. It doesn't fit anything that's published, but it's things I can and will do, and I will create that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's that energy that I feel of you saying, hey, I've got you. I'm here to steady your boat in any way that it needs to be steadied. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this concept of empath distress disorder with us. And I will make sure that your links get posted so that anybody who is interested or needs to have their boat steadied in just the way that you can do it can find you. So
that's great. Thank you, Sandy, so much for talking to me and asking me all these great questions, because that just really, fuels my creativity to be able to dialogue with somebody who gets me like you do. So thanks.
Thank you.